For years, American presidents have said Iran cannot get a nuclear weapon. This past weekend, Donald Trump took action and a big gamble. Whether Iran's nuclear infrastructure has been completely destroyed remains to be seen. A draft assessment from the Pentagon reportedly says core components have only been damaged. But at least for now, fears of a wider Mideast war have receded. So, Rick, did the man meet the moment?
Maybe. A quick, aggressive, directed attack, very limited response from Iran, one designed not to harm Americans and even tipped to us, a quick agreement to a ceasefire. You know, things look good, but there are a lot of unanswered questions. First, as you said, what did the bombing accomplish? You know, Trump told us that they obliterated the facility, and now we're finding out that maybe it's only 2 months delayed. You know, what's happened to the enriched uranium? Part of the problem is, you know, we already know that we can't trust what Trump says. I also wonder, what does Trump believe? What kind of incentives is this have? What's Iran going to do now? Are they going to quickly try to get a small bomb? So on the surface, it looks like maybe, but there are a lot of unanswered questions for me.
Yeah, I think one of the things to remember is what Alexander Hamilton laid out in Federalist Number 70, and it lays out the institutional logic of the presidency, which is that you need one of the branches to be able to move quickly. Hamilton used the term energy. Congress is not structurally suited to respond to the kinds of emerging issues that are happening in our current global security environment. I would agree with you that the means are questionable, and also whether or not it is effective. I mean, you know, we'll find out if it was effective, but at the end of the day, what it does do is it sends a very clear message and it sets a strategy, and that message is mess around and find out.
So is that the new Trump doctrine then, for nuclear non-proliferation? If you try to build a bomb, we won't let you?
Yeah, I think it's, as I said, mess around and find out, because the country as a whole has seen that sanctions did not work under Obama. And in fact, you know, there was a global cooperation there. They didn't work under Biden. All it did was give to Iran $100 billion to continue their program. And so this is where we are. We have to deal with the realities. And if I could just say this, not just as of a country that is an existential threat to Israel, but that has for decades also committed to death to America. And so we have skin in the game.
Right. Iran has not been a good international player. There's no question about that. But I do wonder, Rick mentioned that, well, maybe it's only delayed a couple of months. If that's the case, Sarah, I mean, the Obama deal, which was not just Obama, of course, there were many nations involved with that, perhaps was the better approach.
Yeah, I mean, I think about that a lot. I mean, so one measure of effectiveness or success, which of course Trump has already declared full success, which is his MO, is, you know, how much did it set them back from actually being able to construct a nuclear weapon? But that's even a narrow, you know, I think, definition of success, because the other way you could think about it is what Rick was saying in terms of incentives. You know, what is the lesson first that Iran's getting from this? You know, does it shift their incentives and say, like, hey, now we really know that we need some kind of nuclear weapon, because would Israel have done that to them if they had had a nuclear weapon? And that's not just for Iran, but that's for the other countries who are looking at this situation. It's like, okay, I think we need a nuclear weapon as deterrence against this.
But doesn't that also then get back to that other point that if they try and get it, you know, we won't let you?
That historically has not proven as successful of bombing countries or using military action as diplomacy. I mean, the JCPOA was actually working. You know, it was, they were abiding by it. The IAEA had incredible access to Iran's nuclear facilities, so there was a lot more transparency. And it was working until Trump torpedoed it and took the United States out of it. Within a year, Iran was back to its business of trying to enrich uranium. And so we would be in a much better position right now if that had stayed in place.
There's an argument to be made, is there not, Lisa, that he almost had to do this?
Well, there's an argument to be made based on the opportunity that the Israelis had created by really weakening Iran's air defenses by clearly infiltrating their security forces and weakening them. And their intelligence seems to be incredible inside Iran, which is one reason why I'm eager to hear what Israel's sort of official defense assessment is. So there was this opportunity that made it appropriate for the United States to take advantage of it without putting American servicemen's lives and other sort of American interests at risk. So there was that. And whether it's set back, I mean, it's always a matter of timing. It's not, I mean, until this regime is gone and is not replaced by one that is as bad or worse, it's always going to be a matter of how long. It's not possible to utterly destroy a country's nuclear program forever. There are new nuclear scientists and new nuclear material. So, whether it's a few months or a few years, I agree with those who've said, even if it didn't destroy or significantly set back the program, it seems that it did send a message. And even Democrats today are saying Iran cannot be allowed, this regime can never be allowed to have a nuclear weapon.
And that has been the U.S. policy for decades now.
And it has had bipartisan backing right up until it was Trump who turned around and did what I consider to be the right thing here. But if I could just respond to something that Sarah said, the IAEA was not able to go in and to inspect the more serious sites or the more problematic sites. So yeah, in theory, they had the authority to go in and inspect, but inspections were always a problem. And the question of whether Iran was a year out versus 3 to 4 months out is a difference without a distinction. Iran should not have a weapon now or ever.
And I want to get to the point you were making earlier, Nina, about Congress. I mean, what is their role now in this modern age?
I mean, there really is no, I mean, different constitutional scholars will answer that question differently. The basic gist of the problem is that the Constitution vests in Congress the power to declare war and raise armies, but it vests in the president the power to be the commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy. And, Congress has continued to authorize more and more spending for a standing army. The standing army is bigger, it's more powerful, it's more weaponized, and Congress hasn't asserted, with the exception of the War Powers Resolution, 50 years ago or so. And all that says is that when possible, the president needs to notify Congress. I mean, so all this has to do with what your definition of declaring war is, what your definition of raising and supplying armies and stuff. But the War Powers Resolution says when possible. Well, if you're going to launch a surprise attack, do we really want to be informing
He was informing the entire world.
Well, I was going to say it was
Congress.
no surprise. It was no surprise.
He was doing it on social media,
in
but
capital
wouldn't
letters,
give,
yes.
Wouldn't alert Congress? I mean, it's just another
Well,
consolidation.
he alerted Congress. He alerted leaders of Congress, right? He didn't, but he
Not
didn't
the
go
Democrats. He didn't do
He
it.
gave Chuck Schumer about a minute's notice, I think.
Yeah.